6 signs of a stupid person and how to make sure you're not one of them. There's a harsh truth that most people don't want to hear. Stupidity isn't about lacking knowledge. It's about refusing to learn, resisting change, and clinging to self-destructive habits. You've probably met people who always seem to make the worst decisions, blame everyone else for their failures, or pretend to be smart while proving the opposite. But here's the real kicker. Most stupid people have no idea they are stupid. The good news? Stupidity is not a permanent condition. It's a choice. And once you recognize the warning signs, you can break free from them. In this video, I'm going to expose 6 undeniable signs of a foolish person. Not to judge or criticize, but to help you spot these traits in yourself and others. Because the only way to avoid being trapped by ignorance is to recognize it first. Now, here's something to think about. What if the one thing holding you back from success, happiness, and better relationships isn't bad luck, but an invisible flaw you've never questioned? What if a simple mindset shift could completely change the way you navigate life? Stick with me, because by the end of this video you might just discover something about yourself that will transform the way you think, act, and grow. Let's dive in. Sign number 1. A closed mind. The fortress of ignorance. A closed mind is like a fortress, built brick by brick with fear, pride, and an unwillingness to embrace change. What starts as a form of self-protection quickly turns into a self-imposed prison. People with closed minds are terrified of being wrong. They see new perspectives as threats rather than opportunities. They reject opinions that challenge their worldview, and instead of questioning their own beliefs, they double down on them. No matter think about a man named Richard. He was a successful businessman in the 1990s, running a chain of retail stores. When e-commerce started gaining traction, his colleagues urged him to consider taking his business online. Richard dismissed them, saying, "People will always prefer shopping in person." He refused to adapt, convinced that his traditional model was untouchable. Year after year, his profits shrank while his competitors embraced online sales and flourished. By the time he realized his mistake, it was too late. His empire had crumbled, not because he lacked intelligence, but because he refused to acknowledge the changing world around him. Why do people become so resistant to change? Because deep down, they fear what it means to be wrong. Admitting that they don't know everything threatens their ego. It forces them to accept that they are not as knowledgeable, as capable, or as superior as they'd like to believe. So instead of embracing curiosity, they retreat into the safety of certainty, even if that certainty is built on weak foundations. They choose to argue rather than listen, to ridicule rather than understand. And the worst part? They don't realize how much they are limiting themselves. When you close yourself off from new ideas, you stop learning. And when you stop learning, you stop growing. Imagine a young athlete who refuses to take advice from experienced coaches because he thinks he already knows everything. He keeps making the same mistakes, repeating the same bad habits, and never improves. His raw talent can only take him so far before others, willing to learn and adapt, surpass him. A closed mind isn't just a minor flaw. It is a roadblock to progress. It limits creativity, stunts relationships, and prevents personal and professional development. The ancient Stoics understood the dangers of a closed mind. They taught that true wisdom comes not from clinging to what you know, but from recognizing what you don't know. Epictetus, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, once said that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. Wisdom isn't about winning arguments. It's about seeking truth, even when it is uncomfortable. It's about understanding that being wrong is not a failure, but an opportunity to grow. If you find yourself rejecting new ideas too quickly, ask yourself, am I afraid of being wrong, or am I afraid of learning something new? Do I dismiss opinions just because they contradict mine, or do I genuinely consider them? What if the very thing I'm resisting is the key to my next level of growth? The smartest people in the world are not the ones who think they have all the answers. They are the ones who never stop questioning. The question is, will you keep building the walls of your fortress, or will you finally step outside and see what else the world has to offer? Sign number 2, constant blaming. The trap of avoiding responsibility. There is a man named Daniel who has spent his entire life convinced that his failures are never his fault. When he lost his job, he blamed his boss for being unfair. When his marriage ended, he said his wife was too demanding. When his business venture collapsed, he blamed the economy. No matter what happened, there was always someone or something else responsible. In Daniel's mind, he was just a victim of bad luck, bad people, and bad circumstances. But here's the truth. People like Daniel don't struggle because the world is against them. They struggle because they refuse to take responsibility for their own choices. The habit of constant blaming is not just about avoiding guilt. It is about avoiding growth. When you blame everything and everyone else, you rob yourself of the ability to change. You remain stuck, repeating the same mistakes over and over again, unable to break free from the cycle of failure. Think about someone who constantly blames their bad financial situation on the government, the economy, or greedy corporations. While they complain, someone else in the same circumstances is finding ways to improve their situation, learning new skills, and taking action. The difference isn't in their external reality. It is in their mindset. One person takes responsibility and the other avoids it. And only one of them has the power to change their future. The Stoics had a simple but powerful philosophy. Focus only on what you can control. You cannot control the economy, but you can control how you manage your money. You cannot control how people treat you, but you can control how you respond. You cannot control every misfortune that happens in life, but you can control whether you let it define you. Imagine two sailors caught in a storm. One curses the wind, complains about the waves, and blames fate for his suffering. The other tightens the sails, adjusts the course, and does everything he can to survive. The storm does not care about either of them, but only one of them will make it through. Taking responsibility is not about blaming yourself for everything that goes wrong. It is about recognizing that your actions, your reactions, and your decisions shape your life more than any external force ever could. The moment you accept this truth, you stop being a victim and start becoming the master of your own fate. So ask yourself, where in your life are you still shifting blame? Are you pointing fingers at others instead of looking in the mirror? Are you waiting for things to change instead of taking action? The sooner you take ownership of your life, the sooner you can start moving forward. Sign number 3, arrogance, the mask of insecurity. There was a man named Jonathan, a senior executive at a large corporation. He walked into meetings with the air of someone who had all the answers, shutting down any idea that wasn't his own. His employees had long stopped offering suggestions because they knew he wouldn't listen. To Jonathan, admitting he didn't know something was a sign of weakness. He believed that confidence meant always being right, always leading, always proving that he was the smartest person in the room. But here's the irony. Jonathan's arrogance was not a sign of strength. It was a mask for his deepest insecurity. Underneath his bravado was a fear that if he ever admitted he was wrong, people would lose respect for him. Instead of facing that fear, he built walls of superiority, dismissing others and inflating his own self-importance. He wasn't leading. He was suffocating his own potential. Arrogance is not confidence. It is the illusion of confidence, carefully constructed to hide the cracks underneath. Truly confident people have no problem admitting when they don't know something, because their sense of self-worth isn't built on being seen as infallible. They are secure enough to learn from others, while the arrogant person pretends they already know it all. Think about the difference between a wise mentor and a know-it-all. The mentor listens, considers different viewpoints, and challenges their own beliefs. The know-it-all cuts people off, disregards feedback, and believes their way is the only way. One is respected, the other is merely tolerated. Arrogance is dangerous not just because it isolates you from others, but because it prevents you from growing. When you think you already have all the answers, you stop seeking them. You stop learning, stop evolving, and eventually you get left behind. Jonathan learned this the hard way when his company began losing ground to younger, more innovative competitors. His refusal to listen to new ideas had created a culture of stagnation. By the time he realized his mistake, it was too late. His position, once untouchable, had become irrelevant. The Stoics understood that true confidence doesn't come from putting others down, but from recognizing your own limitations and striving to improve. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Roman emperors and a devoted Stoic, wrote in his personal reflections that it is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. Real strength comes from humility. It takes far more courage to say, "I don't know, but I'm willing to learn," than to pretend you have all the answers. The most respected people in history were not those who claimed superiority over others, but those who embraced continuous learning, surrounded themselves with diverse perspectives, and remained open to growth. So ask yourself, do you truly listen when people speak, or are you just waiting for your turn to talk? Do you dismiss ideas that aren't your own, or do you take the time to consider them? The difference between arrogance and wisdom is not intelligence, but the willingness to acknowledge that no matter how much you know, there is always more to learn. Sign number 4, lack of empathy, the barrier that pushes people away. Michael was the kind of person who never seemed to care about how others felt. If a friend shared their struggles, he would shrug and say, "That's life. Get over it." When his colleague at work was overwhelmed, he dismissed it with, "We all have problems, deal with it." He wasn't cruel in the obvious sense. He just didn't think emotions mattered. To him, caring too much was a weakness. He prided himself on being logical, direct, and unbothered by other people's problems. What Michael didn't realize was that his lack of empathy wasn't making him strong. It was making him alone. His relationships were shallow. His colleagues respected his work, but avoided him personally. His friendships never lasted long because people got tired of feeling unheard. Even his family found it difficult to connect with him. Empathy is not just about being nice. It is about understanding the emotions of others, recognizing their struggles and responding in a way that builds connection rather than creating distance. People who lack empathy often believe they are being rational or efficient, but in reality they are pushing people away without realizing it. Think about how important empathy is in everyday life. A great leader doesn't just give orders. They understand the struggles of their team and inspire them to work toward a shared goal. A strong relationship isn't just about communication. It's about listening, understanding, and truly seeing the other person for who they are. A successful business doesn't just sell products. It understands the needs of its customers and builds trust. When someone lacks empathy, their interactions become cold and transactional. They may wonder why their relationships feel distant or why people don't open up to them, never realizing that it is their own inability to connect that creates the problem. The Stoics understood that empathy is not a weakness, but a strength. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic leaders, wrote in his personal journal, "Whenever you are about to find fault with someone, ask yourself the following question: what fault of mine most resembles the one I am about to criticize?" This simple reflection is a reminder that before judging others, we must first understand them. True wisdom is not just about knowing things, it is about understanding people. The most powerful individuals in history were not those who ignored emotions, but those who used empathy to lead, to inspire, and to bring out the best in those around them. If you find yourself dismissing others' feelings, ask yourself, do I listen, or do I just wait for my turn to speak? Do I try to understand what someone is going through, or do I assume they are overreacting? Do I see empathy as a skill or as a burden? People don't remember what you say as much as how you make them feel. The choice is yours. Will you continue to push people away, or will you use empathy to build stronger, more meaningful relationships? Sign number 5, fear of change, the invisible chain that holds you back. James had been working the same job for 20 years. Every morning, he followed the same routine, drank the same coffee, and took the same route to work. His life was predictable, safe, and comfortable. But deep down, he wasn't happy. He often daydreamed about starting his own business or moving to a new city, but every time the thought crossed his mind, fear crept in. What if I fail? What if it's worse than what I have now? What if I'm just not good enough? So he stayed exactly where he was, convincing himself that stability was better than risk. Years passed, and nothing changed. He watched younger colleagues take chances, grow and move forward, while he remained stuck in the same place. What James didn't realize was that his fear of change wasn't keeping him safe. It was keeping him trapped. Fear of change is one of the most silent yet destructive forces in life. It convinces people to settle, to avoid risk, and to stay in their comfort zones, even when those comfort zones are holding them back. It whispers lies, telling them that failure is unbearable, that the unknown is dangerous, that staying the same is the only way to survive. But here's the truth. Life itself is change. The ancient Stoics understood this well. The philosopher Heraclitus famously said, "The only constant in life is change." The world is always moving, evolving, and shifting. Resisting change doesn't stop it from happening. It only makes you unprepared for it. Think about nature. A tree that refuses to bend in the wind eventually breaks. A river that stops flowing turns stagnant. Everything in life must adapt, or it will slowly decay. The real reason people fear change isn't because they don't want something better. It's because they are afraid of failure and the unknown. They would rather stay in a bad situation they understand than risk stepping into something new. But look at history. Every great leader, innovator, or thinker was someone who embraced change. They weren't fearless, they simply acted despite their fears. They understood that every obstacle, every failure, and every unknown path was an opportunity to grow. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic emperors, said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, the very thing you fear is often the path to your greatest growth. So what's stopping you? Is it the fear of failing? The fear of starting over? The fear of leaving behind what is familiar? These fears are real, but they are not reasons to stop. They are signs that you are standing at the edge of something important, something that could change your life if you have the courage to embrace it. The next time you feel fear holding you back, ask yourself, what if this challenge is exactly what I need to grow? Because the truth is, the greatest opportunities in life are often disguised as uncertainty. Will you resist them, or will you step forward and evolve? Sign number 6. Talking more than listening. The sound of missed opportunities. There was a man named Robert who loved the sound of his own voice. In every conversation, he dominated the discussion, barely giving others a chance to speak. If someone tried to share their thoughts, he would cut them off with his own opinions, eager to prove he knew more. He wasn't trying to be rude. He genuinely believed that talking more made him appear intelligent, confident, and knowledgeable. But what Robert never realized was that his excessive talking was doing the opposite. People grew tired of conversations with him. They stopped sharing ideas, knowing he wouldn't listen. His co-workers avoided asking for his input because they knew he would turn a short discussion into a long-winded monologue. Even his friends felt disconnected, as if he wasn't truly present when they spoke. He thought he was impressing people with his words, but in reality, he was pushing them away. Talking more than listening is one of the biggest mistakes people make in communication. It's a habit rooted in ego and insecurity, the belief that we must always have something to say, that silence is uncomfortable, and that being the loudest person in the room makes us the most important. But here's the truth. The wisest people don't talk the most. They listen the most. The ancient Stoics understood this well. Epictetus, a former slave who became one of the most respected philosophers in Rome, once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." He recognized that true learning doesn't come from speaking. It comes from listening, observing, and understanding. Think about a great leader, a trusted mentor, or a respected friend. What do they have in common? They make people feel heard. They don't interrupt, dismiss, or dominate conversations. Instead, they listen carefully, ask thoughtful questions, and create an environment where others feel valued. When you talk more than you listen, you miss out on opportunities to learn. Every person you meet knows something you don't. If you're always talking, you're blocking yourself from valuable knowledge. Stronger relationships. People don't just want to be heard, they need to be heard. When you truly listen, you build trust, respect, and connection. Better decision-making. Leaders who listen make better choices because they have more information. Those who only hear themselves often walk blindly into mistakes. So ask yourself, do you listen to understand or do you listen just to respond? The difference between a fool and a wise person isn't intelligence. It's the ability to stay silent long enough to learn something new. Recognizing the signs of foolishness is not about judging others. It is about looking inward and ensuring we do not fall into these traps ourselves. In a world that moves fast, where distractions are endless, and where ego often takes center stage, it is easy to slip into habits that hold us back. But wisdom is not about knowing everything. It is about continuously growing, learning, and improving. The habits of arrogance, lack of empathy, and resistance to change are not just personality flaws. They are barriers that keep us from reaching our full potential. The more we cling to pride, dismiss the emotions of others, and refuse to adapt, the more we isolate ourselves and stagnate in life. Growth only happens when we are willing to challenge ourselves, to question our beliefs, and to open our minds to new perspectives. One of the most powerful lessons from Stoic philosophy is to focus only on what we can control. We cannot control external circumstances, but we can control our reactions. We cannot change the past, but we can take responsibility for our present and our future. Every time we blame others for our failures, we give away our power. The moment we take responsibility for our lives, we regain control and create the possibility of real change. And perhaps the most important lesson of all, stay humble, stay open, stay willing to learn. Too often, people let their egos block them from growth. They surround themselves with yes men, ignore constructive criticism, and live in an echo chamber of their own beliefs. But the smartest people in the world are not the ones who claim to know everything. They are the ones who ask questions, listen deeply, and constantly seek to improve. Change is uncomfortable, but it is necessary. Life will never remain the same, and the more we resist, the harder we make it for ourselves. Instead of fearing challenges, we should embrace them as opportunities to evolve. Every setback, every difficulty, every obstacle is a lesson in disguise. As Marcus Aurelius said, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. So the real question is, will you resist growth, or will you embrace it? Will you repeat the same patterns, or will you break free from them? The choice is yours. Wisdom is not something we are born with. It is something we cultivate through start today. Choose to be better. If you found value in this video, support the channel by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Your engagement helps spread these powerful Stoic lessons to more people who need them. Leave a comment below. Let me know which lesson resonated with you the most. And remember, self-improvement is a journey, not a destination. Let's grow together. See you in the next video.